Danny Cole stood in the center of the alien courtroom with his hands locked behind his back. The energy shackles burned cold against his wrists. He had been standing there for 6 hours while the judges talked among themselves in their clicking language. They did not care that his legs ached. They did not care that he had not eaten in 2 days. To them, he was not a person. He was a problem that needed to go away. The courtroom was built for creatures much taller than humans. The ceiling rose so high that Danny could barely see it. The walls were made of black stone that seemed to swallow light. Everything about this place was designed to make prisoners feel small and helpless. Danny refused to feel either. He thought about how he had ended up here. 3 months ago, he had been the captain of a small cargo ship called the Lucky Star. It was not a fancy ship. It was old and slow and made strange noises when it flew. But it was his ship and he had loved it. His crew of 12 had been like family to him. They carried medicine and food supplies to human colonies on the outer edges of explored space. It was honest work, simple work, good work. Then the pirates came. They appeared out of nowhere in the dead of night. 3 ships, fast and well-armed, with weapons that could tear the Lucky Star apart in seconds. They demanded that Danny surrender his cargo and his crew. They said they would sell the medicine on the black market and sell his people as slaves. Danny had fought back. He did not have military training. He did not have powerful weapons, but he had a crew that trusted him, and he had a stubborn refusal to let good people suffer. They used the cargo containers as shields. They rerouted power from life support to boost their one small cannon. They flew into an asteroid field where the bigger pirate ships could not follow easily. Against all odds, they won. They destroyed 2 pirate ships and damaged the third so badly that it limped away into the darkness of space. Danny thought he was a hero. He thought wrong. What he did not know was that those pirates worked for the tall aliens with their cold eyes and colder hearts had been funding pirate operations for years. They used criminals to weaken human trade routes and make humanity look incapable of protecting itself. When Danny destroyed those ships, he had embarrassed a very powerful species. So they arrested him. They claimed he had attacked innocent trading vessels. They produced fake evidence and bribed witnesses from 3 different species. His crew was scattered across the galaxy, forbidden from speaking about what really happened. The Lucky Star was seized and probably destroyed. Now Danny stood alone in this dark courtroom, waiting for aliens to decide his fate. The head judge finally turned to look at him. Her name was Arbiter, and she was the oldest Danny had ever seen. Her skin had turned almost white with age, and her black eyes held no warmth at all. When she spoke, her voice sounded like stones grinding together. "Danny Cole of Earth," she said. "This tribunal has reviewed all evidence against you. You have been found guilty of unprovoked aggression, destruction of peaceful vessels, and murder of innocent beings. The punishment for these crimes is death." Danny felt his heart freeze in his chest. He had expected prison. He had not expected this. But Arbiter was not finished. "However," she continued, "they are a merciful species. We do not believe in wasteful killing. Therefore, your death sentence will be changed to life imprisonment. You will serve your sentence at the mining facility on 7, where you will work until your natural death." She said these words as if she was giving him a gift. Danny knew better. He had heard stories about 7. Everyone had. It was an asteroid prison where they sent the people they wanted to disappear. Prisoners there mined rare minerals in toxic tunnels until their lungs gave out or their bodies broke down. The average life expectancy was 3 years. For humans, it was less than 2. This was not mercy. This was a slow execution disguised as justice. "Do you have anything to say before this tribunal closes your case?" Arbiter asked. Danny looked up at her. He looked at the rows of judges watching him with their expressionless faces. He thought about his crew, scattered and silenced. He thought about his ship, probably floating in pieces somewhere in the cold void. He thought about everything he had lost because he had dared to fight back against evil. "Yes," he said, His voice was calm and steady. "I want you to remember this moment." Arbiter tilted her head slightly. "And why is that?" "Because someday," Danny said, "you are going to regret what you did here today. I do not know how, I do not know when, but you made a mistake by not killing me quickly. You gave me time, and time is all I need." The courtroom was silent. Some of the younger judges looked uncomfortable. Arbiter simply stared at him for a long moment before making a dismissive gesture with her long fingers. "Take him away," she said. "The human talks bravely now. We will see how brave he feels after a few months in the mines." Guards grabbed Danny by his arms and dragged him toward the exit. His legs were weak from standing so long, but he forced himself to walk with his head held high. He would not give them the satisfaction of seeing him stumble. As they pulled him through the doors, Danny took one last look at the courtroom. Arbiter had already turned away, moving on to the next case. To her, he was already forgotten, just another criminal sentenced to die slowly in the dark. But Danny was not like the other prisoners she had sent to 7. He was human, and humans had a very long history of doing impossible things when people told them they could not. The transport ship to the asteroid prison was cold and cramped. Danny sat in a small metal cell with nothing but his thoughts to keep him company. Through a tiny window, he watched the stars slide past. Somewhere out there, his crew was still alive. Somewhere out there, people were still fighting against injustice. He would find a way back to them. He did not know how yet, but he would figure it out. He always did. The thought they were sending him to his grave. They did not understand that they were sending him to his workshop. They had given him an asteroid full of raw materials and expected him to lie down and die. They had no idea what a human could build when he had nothing left to lose. Danny closed his eyes and began to think. The journey to 7 would take several days. He planned to use every moment of it. By the time the prison asteroid came into view, he already had the beginning of a plan. The transport ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel, and Danny got his first look at 7. It was an ugly rock floating in the darkness between stars. The surface was covered with sharp ridges and deep craters that made it look like something had chewed on it and spit it out. A thin dome covered the main facility, glowing faintly in the starlight. Beyond the dome, there was nothing but cold black space. The guards did not bother with gentle treatment. They grabbed Danny and the other new prisoners and shoved them toward the airlock. There were 7 new arrivals in total. 3 were aliens that Danny did not recognize. 2 were from a species called the, with blue skin and large, sad eyes. 1 was a tall creature with 4 arms that Danny later learned was a, and 1, to his surprise, was another human. She was a woman about his age with short dark hair and tired eyes. When their gazes met, she gave him a small nod. It was nice to know he was not the only one of his kind in this place. The airlock opened and they were pushed into the prison facility. The smell hit Danny first. It was a mix of chemicals, sweat, and something rotten that he could not identify. The air was hot and thick, making it hard to breathe. Lights flickered overhead, casting strange shadows on the metal walls. A guard stood waiting for them. He was younger than the judges Danny had faced, but his eyes held the same cold cruelty. He looked at the new prisoners like they were insects. "Welcome to 7, he said in a bored voice. "Your old lives are over, you belong to us now. You will work in the mines 12 hours every day. You will sleep in the barracks for 8 hours. The remaining 4 hours are yours to eat and rest. Anyone who tries to escape will be killed. Anyone who refuses to work will be killed. Anyone who causes trouble will be killed. Are there any questions?" Nobody spoke. The guard smiled. "Good, get to work." The first week was the hardest thing Danny had ever experienced. The mines were a nightmare of narrow tunnels and toxic fumes. Prisoners used simple hand tools to chip away at the rock walls, searching for veins of rare minerals that the sold across the galaxy. The heat was unbearable. The air burned his lungs. His muscles screamed with pain every night. Many prisoners gave up quickly. Danny watched 3 of them die in his first month. One collapsed from exhaustion and never woke up. One breathed in too much toxic gas and choked to death in the tunnels. One simply walked into an airlock and stepped outside without a suit. The guards did not care. There were always more prisoners to replace the ones who died. But Danny refused to break. Every morning, he forced himself to stand up and keep going. Every night, he studied the prison around him, looking for weaknesses. He watched the guards and learned their patrol patterns. He observed the automated drones that watched the tunnels and noted where their sensors could not reach. He listened to the older prisoners and learned everything they knew about the asteroid. And slowly, he began to see something that they had missed. 7 was not just a prison, it was a treasure chest. The asteroid contained iron, titanium, copper, silicon, and dozens of other minerals. They only cared about the rare elements that they could sell for profit. They ignored everything else. But Danny looked at those common materials and saw something different. He saw the pieces of a ship. He needed help. He could not build anything alone. The other human prisoner was named Kate Harper. Danny found her one evening sitting alone in the corner of the eating hall. She was staring at her food without eating, her face empty and hopeless. He sat down across from her. "You are an engineer," he said quietly. It was not a question. He had watched her work in the tunnels. She moved like someone who understood machines. Kate looked up at him. "I was a spacecraft mechanic," she said, "before they framed me for smuggling and sent me here." "I was a cargo captain," Danny said, "before I made the mistake of defending my crew from pirates that they were paying." Something flickered in Kate's eyes. It might have been anger, it might have been hope. "What do you want?" she asked. "I want to get out of here," Danny said, "and I think you can help me." Kate laughed bitterly. "Nobody gets out of 7. The only way off this rock is in a body bag." "Or in a ship," Danny said. Kate stared at him. "There are no ships here, just the transport that comes once a month to drop off supplies and new prisoners." Danny leaned closer and lowered his voice. "What if we built one?" She looked at him like he had lost his mind. Maybe he had, but after a moment she leaned in too. "Tell me more," she said. Their third ally came a few weeks later. His name was, and he was the that Danny had seen on the transport ship. He had 4 arms, 2 large eyes, and skin that changed color depending on his mood. Right now, it was a dull that meant exhaustion and despair. Had been an engineer on his home world. He had built machines that made life better for his people. Then he had questioned his government's alliance with and they had thrown him away like garbage. Now he spent his days digging rocks like an animal. Danny approached him carefully. They did not trust easily, especially not aliens from other species. But Danny had learned that trust could be built with patience and honesty. "I have a plan," Danny told him one night in the tunnels, far from the guard drones. "I am going to build a ship from the materials in this asteroid. I am going to fly it out of here, and I am going to take anyone who wants to come with me." Stared at him with all 4 of his eyes. His skin shifted from to a confused orange. "That is impossible," said. "Maybe," Danny agreed. "But humans have a long history of doing impossible things. We went to our moon with less computing power than a simple calculator. We crossed our planet's oceans in boats made of wood. When someone tells us we cannot do something, we find a way to prove them wrong." Was quiet for a long moment. Then his skin slowly shifted to a pale blue that Danny had learned meant curiosity. "What would you need me to do?" asked. Danny smiled. "Help me figure out how to smelt iron in a volcanic vent without getting caught." It was the beginning of something that would change the galaxy. But first, they had a lot of work to do. Danny drew his plans on the tunnel walls using mineral dust. He worked during the brief rest periods when the guard drones flew to other sections of the mine. Kate would stand watch at one end of the tunnel while watch the other. They had exactly 15 minutes before the drones returned. The design was not beautiful, it was not elegant, but it was possible, and that was all that mattered. We need a hull strong enough to survive space travel, Danny explained, his fingers tracing lines in the dust. The asteroid has plenty of iron and titanium. We can smelt them in the volcanic vents on the far side of the rock. They never go there because the heat is too dangerous for their equipment. And for living things, Kate pointed out. We will work in short shifts, Danny said. 15 minutes at a time, then rotate out. It will take longer, but we will stay alive. Studied the drawings with his 4 eyes moving independently. His skin had shifted to a thoughtful purple. The structural design is sound, he admitted. But what about propulsion? You cannot fly through space by wishing. Danny pointed to another section of his diagram. There are radioactive isotopes deep in the asteroid core. Mine them occasionally, but consider them low value. We can use them to build a primitive fusion reactor. Fusion? Kate's eyes went wide. Danny, fusion reactors require precise engineering and specialized materials. We have pickaxes and our bare hands. Humans built the first nuclear reactors with materials far more primitive than what we have here, Danny said calmly. It will not be pretty. It will not be efficient. But it will work long enough to get us to friendly space. The 3 of them argued and planned and argued some more. Every problem seemed to create 10 new problems. How would they hide the construction from the drones? How would they fuel the ship? How would they navigate once they escaped? How would they survive long enough to finish building? But slowly, piece by piece, they found answers. The hiding problem was solved by. He discovered a natural cavern deep beneath the mining tunnels, created by ancient volcanic activity. The entrance was partially blocked by rubble, making it invisible to casual observation. They spent 2 weeks secretly clearing the debris during their rest periods, carrying rocks away in their pockets and clothes. When they finally broke through, they found a space large enough to build a small ship. The fuel problem was solved by an unexpected ally. A prisoner named had been a chemist before her imprisonment. She had been watching Danny and his friends for weeks, and one night she approached them in the eating hall. I know what you are planning, she said quietly. Her blue skin was pale with fear, but her eyes were determined. I want to help. Danny studied her carefully. How do you know? I see the mineral dust under your fingernails, different colors from different tunnels. You are going places prisoners should not go. Leaned closer. I can synthesize fuel compounds from the waste materials they throw away. They think they are worthless. They are wrong. After joined them, others followed. Word spread through the prisoner population in whispers and glances. Not everyone wanted to join. Some were too broken to hope. Some were too afraid to act. And some, Danny learned painfully, were willing to betray their fellow prisoners for small rewards from the guards. A prisoner named reported them to the drones during Danny's 4th month of planning. Guards searched the tunnels for 2 days, looking for evidence of illegal activity. Danny and his friends hid their drawings and held their breath and prayed to whatever powers might be listening. The guards found nothing. The cavern remained hidden. The plan survived. But Danny learned an important lesson. He could not trust everyone. He had to be more careful about who he brought into the conspiracy. The construction began in the 6th month of Danny's imprisonment. It was slow and painful work. Every piece of metal had to be smuggled from the mining tunnels. Every component had to be shaped by hand using primitive tools. Kate worked herself to exhaustion every night, her clever fingers turning raw ore into functional parts. Designed the structural framework using principles from his home world, combined with human engineering concepts that Danny taught him. They was amazed by human creativity. Your species builds things differently than mine, told Danny one night as they welded support beams together. We follow strict rules and proven designs. You just try things and see what happens. Sometimes that means we fail spectacularly, Danny admitted. But sometimes it means we succeed in ways nobody expected. It is a strange way to engineer, said. His skin shifted to an amused yellow. But I am starting to like it. As the months passed, the conspiracy grew. A programmer named figured out how to hack the patrol patterns of the guard drones, giving them more time to work without being discovered. A massive creature called, from a species Danny could not pronounce, used his incredible strength to carry heavy components through the tunnels. An elderly alien named, who had been a doctor before his imprisonment, treated the injuries that came from working in dangerous conditions. By the end of the first year, nearly 50 prisoners were part of the plan. By the end of the second year, that number had grown to almost 200. They came from 17 different species. They had nothing in common except suffering and a desperate desire to be free. The ship grew slowly in the hidden cavern. It was ugly. It was patched together from 100 different materials in 100 different colors. Wires hung loose in places. The hull was uneven. The reactor housing looked like it might fall apart at any moment. But when Kate ran the first test of the power systems, the lights flickered on. The engine hummed. The ship was alive. Danny stood in the center of his creation and felt tears forming in his eyes. He had spent 2 years dreaming about this moment. There had been so many times when he wanted to give up. So many times when the task seemed too big and too impossible. But he had kept going. They all had. "We need a name," Kate said, standing beside him. Danny thought for a moment. He thought about everyone who had told him this could not be done. He thought about the who had sentenced him to die slowly in the dark. He thought about every person who had ever underestimated what humans could accomplish when they refused to give up. "The Defiance," he said. Kate smiled. It was the first real smile Danny had seen on her face since arriving at 7. "Perfect," she said. Now they just had to finish building it before they discovered what they had done. The news came on a cold morning in the eating hall. An officer walked in and announced that there would be a full inspection of the asteroid in 7 days. Every tunnel would be searched. Every corner would be examined. The authorities had received reports of suspicious activity, and they intended to find the source. Danny felt his blood turn to ice. 7 days was not enough time. The Defiance was nearly complete, but there were still critical systems that needed work. The navigation computer was only half programmed. The life support system had not been properly tested. The hull had a small crack near the rear that they had not yet sealed. But 7 days was all they had. After the inspection, they would find the hidden cavern. They would find the ship. They would find evidence of the conspiracy. And then everyone involved would be executed. Danny called an emergency meeting that night. Nearly 200 prisoners crowded into the tunnels near the cavern entrance, keeping their voices low and their eyes watching for drones. "We launch in 6 days, Danny announced. A wave of nervous murmuring went through the crowd. Kate stepped forward, her face pale but determined. "The ship is not ready," she said. "If we launch now, there is a real chance we will not make it." "If we wait, there is no chance at all," Danny replied. "I would rather die trying to escape than die in an execution chamber." He looked around at the faces watching him. Some were human, most were not. They were and a dozen other species. They had different cultures and different histories and different reasons for being here. But right now, they were all united by a single choice. "I am not going to lie to you," Danny said. "This is dangerous. Some of us might not survive. If anyone wants to stay behind, I understand. No judgment, no blame. But for those who want to try, who want to take one last chance at freedom, the Defiance leaves in 6 days." Nobody moved to leave. Danny felt something warm spread through his chest. It might have been pride. It might have been love for these people who had chosen to trust him with their lives. "Then let us get to work," he said. The next 6 days were a blur of frantic activity. Teams worked around the clock, sleeping only a few hours at a time. Kate led the engineering crews, pushing herself harder than anyone, coordinated the construction teams with military precision, his 4 arms working constantly, synthesized the last batches of fuel, her hands shaking from exhaustion. Danny did everything he could. He welded, he carried, he encouraged, he solved problems and made decisions and kept everyone moving forward even when they wanted to collapse. On the fifth day, a prisoner named made a mistake. He was spotted by a guard drone carrying components through the tunnels. The drone's lights flashed red, and it began transmitting an alert. Panicked and ran. The drone chased him, its weapons powering up, but before it could fire, appeared from a side tunnel. The massive alien grabbed the drone with his enormous hands and crushed it like it was made of paper. They hid the wreckage, but they knew it would be discovered eventually. The timeline moved up. They would have to launch in less than 24 hours. The final night was chaos. Prisoners abandoned their work assignments and flooded into the hidden cavern. The guards noticed the empty tunnels and began searching. Alarms started sounding throughout the facility. Danny stood at the entrance to the cavern, directing traffic like a conductor leading an orchestra. Women and children first. Move to the back of the ship. Stay calm. We have time. They did not have much time. The sound of guard drones was getting closer. Weapons fire echoed in the distance. Someone screamed. Kate grabbed Danny's arm. We need to go now. Not everyone is aboard yet. There is no more time. Danny looked at the tunnel entrance. A group of prisoners was still running toward them, guards close behind. He could see their terrified faces in the flickering emergency lights. Danny shouted, "Start the engine sequence." But the door is still open. Start the sequence. I will close it when everyone is aboard. Hesitated for just a moment, then ran toward the cockpit. Behind Danny, the Defiance began to rumble as its fusion reactor came to life. The last prisoners reached the cavern entrance just as the first guards appeared behind them. Danny grabbed them and pushed them toward the ship, then slammed his hand against the emergency panel. Heavy blast doors, salvaged from an old mining vehicle, crashed down between them and the guards. Danny sprinted toward the Defiance. Energy weapons fire burned through the blast doors behind him, creating holes that let in light and smoke. He dove through the ship's entrance and hit the ground hard. "Close the hatch," he yelled. "Launch now." Kate sealed the ship, fired the engines, and the Defiance, the ugly, impossible ship built from asteroid rocks by prisoners who refused to die, erupted from its hidden cavern and smashed through the dome of the mining facility. The explosion was spectacular. Debris flew in all directions. The prison's atmospheric systems failed instantly, venting air into space. Guards and drones were caught in the chaos. By the time anyone could respond, the Defiance was already climbing away from the asteroid. But they were not free yet. A patrol ship had been stationed nearby, and it was already moving to intercept. It was bigger than the Defiance, faster, better armed. Its captain was screaming orders to destroy the escaping vessel and kill everyone aboard. Danny took the controls. His hands were steady despite the terror pounding in his heart. "The asteroid field," Kate said, pointing at the navigation display. "It is our only chance." The space around 7 was filled with smaller asteroids, creating a maze of spinning rocks that would be deadly for any ship to enter. The captain would never follow them in there. Danny dove into the field without hesitation. The Defiance groaned and shuddered as he weaved between asteroids. A rock scraped along the hull, sending sparks flying. Another nearly clipped the engine. Behind them, the ship fired its weapons. Energy beams cut through space, destroying asteroids but missing the Defiance by meters. The captain was getting desperate. Danny flew like he had never flown before. He pushed the ship past its limits, trusting his instincts and the skills he had developed over a lifetime of piloting. They tried to follow and almost crashed 3 times before finally giving up. When the Defiance emerged on the other side of the asteroid field, the patrol ship was nowhere to be seen. "Calculate the jump to faster than light," Danny ordered. "The drive is not fully tested," warned. "Do it anyway." entered the coordinates. The reactor whined. The entire ship vibrated like it might shake itself apart. And then, with a flash of light that seemed to tear the fabric of space itself, the Defiance jumped to freedom. The Defiance held together through the faster-than-light jump, but only barely. Warning lights flashed across every console. Smoke poured from half the systems. The hull creaked and groaned like it might split open at any moment. But it held. Somehow, against all logic and reason, it held. They traveled through the strange space between stars for 4 days. During that time, Danny and Kate worked constantly to keep the ship alive. They patched leaks with whatever materials they could find. They rerouted power from failing systems to critical ones. They held broken pieces together with their bare hands when nothing else would work. The other passengers helped where they could, used her chemistry knowledge to purify the air when the life support began failing, braced a collapsing support beam with his massive body for 3 hours straight while repairs were made around him, treated the injured with his doctor's skills, saving lives that would otherwise have been lost. Everyone contributed. Everyone mattered. That was what Danny had wanted from the very beginning. On the 4th day, the Defiance dropped out of faster-than-light travel. The stars returned to normal points of light instead of stretched lines, and ahead of them, floating in the darkness of space, was Station. It was the largest human outpost in this sector of the galaxy, a massive structure of metal and lights that served as a trading hub, military base, and diplomatic center. When Danny saw it through the cockpit window, he felt tears streaming down his face. They had made it. Against every odd, they had actually made it. The communication system crackled to life. A suspicious voice came through the speakers. "Unidentified vessel, this is Station Control. You are entering human-protected space. Identify yourself immediately or you will be fired upon." Danny wiped his eyes and leaned toward the microphone. His voice was rough from exhaustion, but steady. "Station, this is Danny Cole, former captain of the cargo vessel Lucky Star. I am currently piloting an unauthorized spacecraft constructed from asteroid materials. I have approximately 187 passengers aboard, representing 17 different species. We are escaped prisoners from the mining facility on 7. We request emergency landing permission and asylum." There was a long silence. Danny could imagine the confusion in the control room. The operators were probably wondering if this was some kind of joke. Then a different voice came through. It was older, calmer, and carried the weight of authority. "Danny Cole, this is Admiral Wells of the Earth Defense Force. Did you just say you built a spacecraft from asteroid materials and escaped from a prison?" "Yes, ma'am," Danny replied. "I know it sounds impossible." Another pause, then the Admiral spoke again. "Cole, I am looking at your ship right now through our long-range sensors. It is the ugliest thing I have ever seen." Danny laughed despite everything. "It is not pretty, ma'am, but it flies." "So I see." The Admiral's voice warmed slightly. "Landing permission granted, Pad 7. Welcome home, Mr. Cole. We have a lot to talk about." The Defiance limped into Station's hangar bay and touched down with a shudder that suggested it would never fly again. The moment the engine stopped, the ship seemed to sigh with relief and settle into stillness. The hangar was packed with people. Soldiers and engineers and journalists and curious civilians had all gathered to see the impossible vessel that had arrived from deep space. When the main hatch opened and Danny stepped out, he was nearly blinded by camera flashes. Behind him came Kate, her face dirty and exhausted but proud. Then, his skin shifting through colors of wonder and relief. Then and all the others who had helped build the dream. 187 beings from 17 different species, all of them standing together in a human station, all of them alive because they had refused to accept death. Admiral Wells pushed through the crowd to meet Danny. She was a tall woman with hair and sharp eyes that had seen many things, but when she looked at the Defiance, those eyes widened with something like amazement. "You actually did it," she said. "You built a starship from rocks." "Not just me," Danny said, "all of us." The news spread across the galaxy within hours. Every network, every station, every planet with a communication receiver heard the story of the prisoners who had escaped, 7 in a ship they had constructed from asteroid materials. Images of the Defiance went viral, shared billions of times by beings who could not believe what they were seeing. They were furious. They demanded extradition of all the prisoners. They claimed that Danny and his companions were dangerous criminals who had destroyed valuable property and murdered innocent guards. Earth's government refused. When the threatened consequences, Admiral Wells invited them to try. The solar system, she reminded them, was full of asteroids, and Earth was full of humans who knew how to build things. They backed down. 3 weeks after landing, Danny was asked to speak at a gathering of diplomats from across the galaxy. Representatives from dozens of species filled the Great Hall of Station, curious to hear from the human who had done the impossible. Danny was nervous. He had never been much of a public speaker, but when he looked out at the crowd and saw in Kate and in all his other friends watching from the front row, he found his voice. "People have asked me how I did it," Danny began. "How I built a starship from asteroid rocks using nothing but hand tools and hope. They want to know the technical secrets, the engineering tricks, the special knowledge that made it possible." He paused and looked around the room. "But there is no secret," he continued. "There is no trick. There is just the simple fact that humans do not know how to give up. When you tell us something is impossible, we hear a challenge. When you put us in a cage, we start looking for a way out. When you give us nothing but rocks, we start figuring out how to build something from them." Danny's voice grew stronger. "They sentenced me to die slowly in a mine. They thought they were breaking me. They did not understand that they were giving me a purpose. Every rock I dug became a piece of my escape. Every prisoner I met became part of my family. Every day I survived was another day to plan, to build, to dream." He smiled slightly. "I am not special. Any human would have done the same thing. That is who we are. We come from a species that looked up at the moon and decided to walk on it. We come from a species that crossed oceans in wooden boats because we wanted to see what was on the other side. We do not accept limits. We do not accept impossible." Danny looked directly at the representatives, who were sitting uncomfortably in the back. "So here is my message to anyone who thinks they can break humanity by putting us in a dark place with nothing but rocks. You cannot. We will just build something amazing from those rocks, and then we will fly home and tell everyone what we did." The hall erupted in applause. The sound echoed through station and was broadcast to every corner of the galaxy. And somewhere in the darkness of space, on an asteroid that had once been a prison, the ruins of 7 floated in silence. A reminder to the galaxy of what happens when you underestimate humans.